Hi, good afternoon, everybody. A warm welcome to today's webinar on safe diamond trading, which is being conducted by Mr. Seville Stern, Chief Operating Officer at RapNet. We are very thankful to him for having this wonderful webinar for us today. Now, I hand over the presentation to him to take it forward from here. During the session, in case if you have any questions, post it in the questions panel, and we will be happy to answer that.
Swapna, thank you very much. Swapna, if you can just give me an indication that people can hear me, and then we can get going.
Yes, all good, sir.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. My name is Seville Stern. I am from the Rapaport Group. Specifically, I manage RapNet for the Rapaport Group. And today we're going to be talking about scams and how to trade diamonds and jewelry safely in an era where we're increasingly reliant on technology. And with technology comes an amazing ability to do business, but at the same time comes an amazing ability for thieves and scammers and crooks to try and steal from us. So I want to speak about trading diamonds safely in today's modern era, but the same goes for jewelry and any other precious items from our industry. The reason that we thought this topic was very useful to discuss is there are a number of scams right now that are attacking our industry, some from outside, some from inside. And the more people understand what's going on, the more people are aware of what's happening, the better the chance they have of protecting themselves. So with that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Rapaport, if for those of you that aren't familiar with the RapNet and the Rapaport Group. The Rapaport Group was established in 1978, 40 years ago next year. We're a global organization with over 230 employees in 7 offices around the world, 5 countries. India, we have an office in Surat, 2 offices in Mumbai. We've got in Belgium, in the USA, 2 offices in Israel and Dubai. So we're all over the place. We have 20,000 clients in 120 countries. And what we do is we offer added value services. And our whole reason for being is to offer competitive, efficient markets that operate ethical and transparently, and we add value in that way. We do diamond certification. We represent some of the world's biggest laboratories. We run RapNet, and of course we're famous for the Rapaport price list, which sets the diamond, reflects the diamond prices around the world. I mentioned some of the things we do. We also run auctions and trading services where we assist people in buying and selling diamonds. Just to give you an idea of the scope and the size of RapNet and what we see, we have members from 94 countries with over 1.3 million diamonds listed on a daily basis at a value of $7+ billion US. So we see a lot of transactions, we see a lot of customers, we see a lot of people interacting, and at the same time we see a lot of the frauds that come out. So we're in a good position to speak to you guys about what's going on in the world and what's going on in the industry. So let's talk a little bit about safe diamond trading. Of course, there's lots of different scams and lots of different ways that people steal diamonds or money in the diamond industry. To mention just a few, obviously undisclosed treatments is an old and famous way of a scam where you present a diamond without disclosing that it's been treated. Sometimes well, we'll get to the certificate scams in a minute. Undisclosed synthetics is becoming a bigger threat, especially in the melee market, where synthetic diamonds are mixed with natural diamonds and sold as a parcel of natural diamonds. And I know the laboratories and a lot of the institutes are developing scanning techniques to be able to identify these diamonds, but until it becomes mainstream that all diamonds are checked to see whether they're synthetic or not, even the ones that are not getting certified, the crooks still have an incentive to mix parcels. Simulant is an old thing, putting a cubic zirconium, American diamond, putting a cubic zirconium into and passing it off as a real diamond, for example. These things we're familiar with, and we, as an industry, we know how to protect ourselves against these kind of issues, because these are known, and they're relatively old, I would say, so that people are well aware of how to deal with it. There's some new things that are popping up. We're seeing a lot of certificate scams. Sometimes people forge laboratory certificates. So GA and HRD are favorite targets, where somebody comes with a forged certificate and not real certificate. Those are often easy to find. Those are often easy to detect. If you just look at the certificate, the paper doesn't feel right. Those are often easy to find. But we're seeing more and more what I call forged diamonds, where somebody will take a diamond, especially an HPHT diamond, cut it to match the exact measurements and weight of an existing real certificate, and sell the diamond with that certificate. So they're selling a real certificate, which if you go online and you do a certificate check at GA, for example, it will tell you the diamond exists, but the actual diamond they sold you is not real. Well, when I say not real, I mean it's not the diamond that matches the certificate. Very often it's an HPHT cut to the exact measurements. So we're seeing that popping up a little bit more and more. Obviously, we know some of the well-known issues that have popped up in the last year or two, where the GA database was broken into by some outside contractors, IT contractors, with some help from the inside, and they changed grading results and led to the GA recalling a number of diamond certificates that they'd issued, because the results had been fraudulently changed at the source at GA. So we're seeing a whole lot of different scams in the market, different crimes in the market that we have to protect ourselves against. Some are easier to protect against than others. Difficult to protect against a grading report that's been changed, at the source. We've seen quite a few reports of HPHT diamonds being passed off as non-HPHT. The worst case we saw was a few years ago, when a 3-carat DIF Type 2A diamond was sold and turned out to be an HPHT non-Type 2A, obviously, diamond, and that was hundreds of thousands of dollars that the buyer lost. And these are things that we should be expert in, because this is our business. As jewelers, as diamond people, this is our business. We can recognize a false certificate, a weird-looking diamond. We can understand if the price isn't right. We know how to protect ourselves against these things. But there's a rising element, a rising crime, a rising scam that I wanted to talk about today, and that is cybercrime. Crime that specifically attacks the technology we use to buy and sell and communicate. And that crime is more difficult to protect ourselves against for a number of reasons. One, because we aren't experts in cyber. We aren't experts in IT technology. We're not meant to be. We've got businesses to run. We're experts in diamonds, in cutting, in marketing, in selling, in all those things. And then there's this IT stuff that we use to trade, to communicate. But in the end, we sometimes get tripped up by thieves who are expert at manipulating these things. And today what I wanted to focus on was this issue of cybercrime, and give you as much information as I can tell you about how it's perpetrated and what you can do to protect yourself, because I think knowledge is the beginning of the protection. If we don't know what the issues are, it's hard to protect ourselves against it. Once we know, we're on the alert. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about cybercrime, and specifically how it affects our industry. And I wanted to start off with the old obvious kind of scams and threats that we come to know, and they're collectively called Nigerian scams, because a lot of the perpetrators are based in Nigeria. And these are the ones where you get a thing saying you've won the lottery, and just there's an admin fee of 500 or 5,000 rupees to release the funds. Send that money and we'll release your 100 million rupees that you've won. Things like that. These are the obvious ones, and we get them and we laugh, and we don't get caught in them, and we move on. I found a great one that I wanted to share with you today. which is, I'll read it out for those of you who can't read the screen. It's an email that came from Nigeria a couple of years ago. And the guy says, I'm Dr. Bakura Tunde, the cousin of a Nigerian astronaut. He was an Air Force Major, Abacha Tunde. He was the first African in space when he made a secret flight to the Salyut 6 space station in 1979. Then it goes on to say he was later on a flight in 1989, and he got stuck. He was stranded in 1990 on the Soviet military space station. And then the Soviet Union dissolved, which was true, and the other crew returned to Earth, but they couldn't put him on the shuttle that went back to Earth because his place was taken up by cargo. So we have this Nigerian astronaut, which there aren't any, who was moved up to a Soviet space station and got stranded there because they rather put cargo on than bringing him back. And then they go, but don't worry, since 1989 there have been occasional supply flights to keep him going. So he's been there for over 10 years, more 20 by now. And then says he's in good humor, but he wants to come home. And then the kicker. In the 14 years since he's been on the space station, he's accumulated flight pay of $15 million US. And they're held in a trust fund. And we just need to raise $3 million to be able to access his trust fund. And basically, we're civil servants, so we can't deal with it. And basically, I'm turning to you to help me raise some funds, and we'll give you this $15 million if we can just raise $15 million, if we can just raise $3 million of it. That's such obvious nonsense. It's such obvious. It's such an obvious scam that I doubt any of you would be caught in that. And these scams actually are made to be obvious. It's a straightforward mass email sent out to random people around the world. And they don't want intelligent people responding to it. Because intelligent people will start asking questions, and intelligent people will say, I'm not going to transfer money until I get some assurances. They want the non-intelligent people, the gullible, the people who are prepared to believe that they could really win $15 million for nothing other except giving a few $1,000s in admin fees. That's who they want. They want these kind of qualified leads. They don't want to deal with intelligent people. And these scams will all go, not us, we'd never be caught. But they get more sophisticated, the scams. And that's really where I want to focus on today. Not the obvious Nigerian prince, the guy who's stuck on the Nigerian who's stuck in a Russian space station for 14 years and gets occasional supply flights. These aren't the kind of cyber attacks I'm talking about. I'm talking about sophisticated attacks, sometimes targeted right at you, knowing a little bit about you, and sometimes they're more random. These sophisticated attacks have kind of 2 or 3 things in common. One, a lot of them use what's called social engineering. Social engineering is when they say, well, we convince you to do something by pretending to know a little bit about you and pretending to know enough that we gain your trust, and so you do something. For example, they go into Facebook and they see you just came back from a holiday in Goa because you've put up some pictures or whatever. And so you'll get an email from them saying, hope you enjoyed your holiday in Goa. Here's some photographs that were taken of you by, I don't know, the official tourism agency. And you click on the attachment, and maybe it doesn't work, or maybe it goes to a link that's something wrong, and you go, junk email, I'll delete it. But you clicked on the attachment. And by clicking on the attachment, some computer program was put on your computer, which now starts tracking you, starts sending out your information to people. Social engineering. They know a little bit about you. They convince you. They did a bit of research, and they got you to click on things. That's what. That's the one common thing that a lot of these sophisticated attacks have. The second thing is cyber attacks. And cyber attacks as it relates to us, are divided into 2 things. There's hacking, which is somebody actually breaking into your computer system and doing something with your email. And then there's phishing, which is spelled with a PH to differentiate it from fishing in a river, for an actual fish with skins, with fins and scales. We're talking about phishing where they dangle a hook for you to take, and those people who bite on the hook get caught. And phishing are things like, you got an email saying, your bank account has been closed. If you want to reopen it, click on this link and put in your username and password. And so the gullible people will click on the link, not realize it's actually not an email from their bank, put in their username and password to their bank, which will then be saved by the thieves. They caught you in the phishing expedition that they're on, and then they can use that username and password to go into your bank account and move money, to guess that maybe your password is the same for that in 20 other sites. Maybe they'll go into your Facebook and they'll start they'll assume your identity theft. Phishing attacks can be very general, like they send out thousands of emails to people saying your bank account's been hacked, but sometimes they can be very targeted, and that's called spear phishing, where it's targeted at you. Like, for example, you went on a holiday in Goa and you suddenly got an email saying, how was your holiday? Here's some photographs. And that's spear phishing, where it's targeted directly at you and not just a general phishing attack. We've seen this in RapNet, by the way, where people have got emails purporting to be from us, purporting to be from RapNet, saying your account has been blocked. In order to unblock it, put in your email address and your RapNet password. And some clients get caught, some don't. Obviously, as soon as you realize you've been involved in a phishing attack, you need to shut down everything, change all your passwords everywhere, maybe get your computer scanned or even reformatted. Take it seriously, because the damage that can happen is large. I'll give you an example of this, just to further that example of when RapNet had a phishing attack against its members. So the people got this email saying, put in your username and your password or whatever. And obviously a lot of people use on their RapNet password maybe a password that they use in other things as well. So it's not just their RapNet password that may be compromised if they give out that information, but other passwords that they have to other things. We tracked down the site that was putting in, that was accepting these username and passwords. And it turned out to be a website of a furniture company in Dubai. A furniture company in Dubai. So I picked up the phone to this furniture company and I said, what are you doing? You're a legitimate company. What is going on here? They didn't even know that this page existed on their website. And it turns out that their website hadn't been protected enough against thieves hacking in to control their website. Somebody had hacked in to their website, put up a page that they didn't know about, sent out this email from servers that are used and then shut down. And so there was no way to trace it back to the actual thieves because they were using other people's equipment, other people's, based on people who had not protected themselves well enough. So very difficult to find these people. They're very slippery. They're very clever, and this is their profession. They're good at it. They try hard at it. They're really excellent at getting us to part with information or money. And so we need to be very, very alert. And when I say things about social engineering and the holiday in Goa, I'm talking about all sorts of things. They may know your birthday. They may know that you've got pets. They may know your husband or wife's names because they found them on Facebook or they saw it on LinkedIn. All sorts of things. One of the most famous stories comes from all these dating sites. Dating sites have been a great blessing for a lot of people who are looking for a partner. And a lot of people have found their future wives or husbands through dating sites. But on the other hand, a lot of criminals hang around these dating sites as well, hoping to attack vulnerable people. And what they do is they set up profiles, and they look like very, very normal, useful profiles, and they get talking to people. And one story that we heard that isn't one story that we heard that isn't from the diamond world. Is that a Nigerian scammer who was, I think, a 14-year-old set up a profile on a dating site, got some lady very interested in meeting him, and they were talking backwards and forwards. He sent her flowers. I believe she was American. He sent her flowers. He sent her gifts. I just have to deal with this. Give me 1 second, everybody. I forgot to switch off my Skype and it's causing havoc. That should work. He sent her flowers. He sent her gifts. This hacker, this from this dating site, and then eventually he told her that he's fallen in love with her, and that he wants to come and meet her, and that he's going to fly to wherever she was to meet her. He was in another country. The only thing is, he said he has to fly via, and which country do you think he's flying via? That's right, you guessed it, he's flying via Nigeria, where he's dropping off his son, who's starting a new job on some oil refinery project in Nigeria. So he's coming to meet her. He's been sending her gifts. He's been sending her flowers. They've been talking on chat for 6 months now, and he goes to Nigeria. And then she doesn't hear from him for a while, and the next thing she hears, he's been in a terrible accident. And he's been in hospital for a while, and he can't really move, and they stole everything of his, including all his bank account, his credit cards and whatever. Can she send him some money to pay for the hospital? Now, what would you do if you've been talking to this person for 6 months, you've fallen in love with them, they've been sending you gifts, so she sends him a bit of money to get out of the hospital. Then he says, well, he needs a bit more money because they need some other operation. Then eventually he's too weak to leave Nigeria, and can she come and fetch him? And he'll pay her back for all of this. So she flies to Nigeria, where she's kidnapped and held ransom, and her family has to pay to get her released. This is as a result of her answering a profile on a dating site. So vulnerable people can get fooled, and it really wasn't. There wasn't a lot that she could do to protect herself against that, other than being vigilant, other than maybe checking this guy out on other places, and being extra careful. And we see that also in the there's some military sites where ex-military people set themselves up as for dating sites, whatever. And there you can check. People call themselves sergeants or colonel in the military. You can actually check were they really there. So there are ways to check, but these hacking and phishing issues are real, and they're very dangerous, and we have to be hyper alert. Because it's very easy to hide behind a screen, and it's difficult to assess whether the person is genuine or not. Let's move closer to our industry and to some of the things that are going on in the world, especially in India. Emails from the tax department. We're going to talk about 3 or 4 different types of fraud today, so that you can learn what to look for and how to protect yourselves. The first type of fraud I want to talk to you today about is emails. You get an email from the income tax department. People get emails from the income tax department. These emails contain attachments which they want you to click on, and that attachment contains a Trojan. The Trojan is a kind of computer virus that sits on your computer there to steal information from your computer. Some of them log every key that you pressed. So you press a key and it's logging which website you're going to, what your login name is, what your password is. Imagine them doing that on your bank account or credit card sites. They log who you're emailing. They basically can see everything that you do on your computer. So the goal is to get you to press this this program and infects your computer without, it doesn't let you know. And often antivirus programs may not pick this up because you press the thing and the antivirus program will say, are you sure you want to run this? And you say yes. So you told it, yes, I want to run it. So the antivirus will let it through. So Trojans are one way that people are doing this kind of fraud. This is rife in India. There are hundreds of thousands of people who get caught in these schemes. By far the biggest percentage of emails from the Income Tax Department of India go to Indians in India. But a good 20–30% go to Indians outside of India, who are living outside of India, and in America, in the UK, in Australia, and in places like that, where they also fall for these scams. And everything that you do on your computer is then sent back to the command and control center of these thieves, and they do with that information identity theft, stealing money from your bank accounts, assuming your identity when trying to talk to other people. Here's an example. of one of those emails that is sent out. This is a real example. It comes from the income tax department. It says here, click on this to see how much money was deducted from your bank account. I would click on it. I want to know why the income tax department took 93,000 rupees from my bank account. When you look at it a bit closer, though, you could see that there's some weird things, like 2 undisclosed recipients. So it didn't come to me directly. It went to a lot of people. The money actually wasn't taken from my bank account. I didn't owe money. Maybe I would not open a zip file without running it through my virus scanner first. There's various things you can do, and we'll get to some of the things later about how to protect yourself. Here's another example that should be on the screen now for you. On the left-hand side is the fake email. On the right-hand side is a genuine email from the income tax department. They both say pretty much the same thing. They both have an attachment. The attachment that's genuine from the income tax department actually requires you to put in your PAN number and your date of birth as a password to open the file. The fake one doesn't obviously need a password, it just opens up. But they look the same, they look like they came from the same people. It's very easy to fake an email address, and it's very easy to get fooled. So we need to be on the alert. Here's an example now that's on the screen that's actually from a diamond dealer. It wasn't really from a diamond dealer, but it looked like it was from a diamond dealer to another diamond dealer, saying, I'm sending you an invoice plus some stock files for you to look at, and maybe you want to buy from me. It's exactly the same signature as the guy normally has. It's the same email address that he normally uses. But if you clicked on attach the copy of the invoice or access documents, you would be installing a Trojan on your computer that would then follow your every move. So not simple to work out what's going on, and we'll get to some of the ways you can protect yourself in a few minutes. So that's the first kind of fraud. A fraud that's designed to get you to click on something, introduce a Trojan virus into your computer so that they can read everything that you're doing. That's clear. The second kind of fraud that I want to talk about today, I've called the invoice modification schemes. And that's where you're dealing with a supplier or buyer. You're in the middle of a transaction, and then suddenly some third party slips into the conversation and sends an invoice to the buyer, which looks like yours, which comes from an email very similar to yours, but the invoice has been modified to change the bank account details. And you then pay to this on this invoice, which you were expecting in the middle of a deal. You pay this invoice, and it's to the crook's bank account. And then normally you pay, and you wait a couple of days for the goods to be delivered. And then maybe you phone up the supplier and say, the goods aren't here, what's going on? And he goes, wait, let me check on that. And he gets back to you a day later, and he says, we never sent you an invoice. And by the time the red flag goes up, it's 3 or 4 days later, and the money's been cleared out of the bank account, and the bank says, I've got nothing to do here. You sent the money there. I didn't make a mistake in what I did. It's not my fault you wired money to somebody that you didn't mean to, and the money's gone. So the invoice modification schemes we see a lot in our industry, and it's something you have to be well aware of to be able to protect yourself against it. According to American numbers, FBI, these email modification schemes, or business email compromise, which is the official name they give it, has caused $5.3 billion US in losses to over 24,000 companies around the world. And I don't think their figures are complete. I believe it's probably more. But the frightening thing, and one of the reasons we're talking today, is that since January 2015, there was more than a 2,000% increase in identifying these losses, in these losses based on these email frauds that come in. And the average loss was $218,000 US per victim. And that's average because there have been some really very high profile ones where millions and millions of dollars were lost, but a lot of people are losing $20,000, $6,000, $50,000, and some of those aren't even being reported because there's not much any police force can do to these schemes, and I'll explain to you why in a second. Let me explain to you just how these invoice things work and what goes on. Here's a simple breakdown of how it works. First of all, after a conversation and you're in the middle of a deal, the supplier sends a business email that says payment has been received, or I want payment, or says when's the next payment coming. The scammer intercepts that email because on one of the sides, either on the supplier or the buyer side, don't forget they're inside their computer. They know their passwords. They can get into things. They either intercept the email and delete it and send their own, or they change the email and let it go on its way, especially when they change the invoice. The customer then receives the email, looks like it's from the supplier, but generally it's slightly altered. It generally comes from an email address that's close to the supplier's email address so that you wouldn't notice the difference, because if you reply to it, the hacker wants to get the reply, not the original guy. They don't want him to get it. And so you get this email that looks legitimate, slips past your defenses because you're expecting it, and it's got a invoice with a bank account in it. And very often, in the case of India, we see the following text in a lot of these emails. Kindly inform when payments shall be made so I can provide you with our offshore trading account, as our accounts department has informed us that our regular account is now under audit and government taxation process, and we can't receive funds through it. And then they give you a bank account in a third country, in an offshore country, most often Asia or African countries where it's hard to get the police involved, very often China, and you send money there because, yeah, it sounds legitimate. You know, maybe we're in the diamond trade, move money around a lot, so it sounds legitimate that an Indian supplier would ask me to send money to his Chinese bank account. No, it doesn't. That's not legitimate. But people do, because, you know, your supplier explained to you that our account's under audit, so please just send the money here. That doesn't make sense. Nobody should pay like that. Nobody should pay to an account that's not in the country where your supplier is. Certainly not pay to an account that's not the normal account you pay to. But these things get lost because our procedures are not so good for how we make payment. Often the person who's responsible for approving payment isn't the one who makes payment, and so it slips through. We had an Israeli customer here who lost $60,000 because he got an invoice from his supplier, and he asked his assistant, his secretary, to pay the invoice, and she paid, and he didn't check that he was actually paying an account in Czechoslovakia, and the supplier was Indian. And it made no sense, but no one checked that because he didn't have good procedures. He has good procedures now, and he lost $60,000 in that transaction. Like I said, the scammers set up a fake email domain, and the sole purpose of that is to make sure that you don't send an email back to the original guy, because now they've taken over your communication. For example, they may have, you know, jula@google.in, and the fake email would be google-in.com. You don't really recognize that. Who's looking at exactly what the email address looks like when it comes in? So this is an example of an actual email received by one of our clients. Our bank account in India is undergoing an audit. We cannot access funds. Please pay China. That's an actual email that was sent, and I'm going to show you a few more examples in the next few minutes so that you can get the look and feel of the kind of things you should be looking out for. Let me give you some of the numbers of and some of the things that have happened with fake invoices. First, not from our industry, and then we'll go into our industry. September 2015, the Saudi natural gas company, Aramco, which is one of the largest oil companies in the world, got an invoice for 197 crore from India's natural gas company. Now, it looked like the same invoices that they'd paid previously. Just this one came from a fake email ID, and they didn't pick it up. And they paid the money. And 2 weeks later, when ONGC asked for payment, they said, "What do you mean payment? We've already made payment." 2 weeks later. And they said, "No, we haven't." And when they investigated, 197 crore gone because they paid an invoice that came in from a fake email. Now, hundreds of Indian companies are falling prey to these attacks in things that look like genuine payment. Amit Jaju, the executive director of fraud investigation services in Ernst & Young, which is one of the big four accounting companies, says that they've witnessed these cases where genuine invoices are tampered with, and we've seen these too in RapNet. Genuine invoices are taken, new bank account details are somehow pasted into a PDF and then injected into the email chain, and it just looks real. Very difficult to detect. And one of the reasons why this has become such a favorite way for people to steal money is that it's pretty easy to execute. You just make sure that somebody clicks on a random email that you send them once and you're in their computer. And more people are moving towards accepting invoices digitally and paying without proper checks in place, without maybe saying 2 people have to approve invoices over a certain amount, without actually saying to your supplier, we're going to phone you every time to confirm the amount of the invoice. Without adding some simple procedures in place that will stop relying on just a plain email. So what is it that the invoice modification schemes have in common? Well, normally one of the sides is using a free email account like Gmail or Hotmail or Yandex in Russia or some of the other ones in India, because these free email accounts are predominantly targeted by these crooks. Once they break in, some of the things they do is they don't even do anything other than they go into your settings and they automatically forward all your email to another address. And if you go into your settings of your Gmail and you find some weird forward address in there, it's an indication that somebody's been into your account and is diverting all your emails to read. And they maybe not even diverting, maybe you get a copy and they get a copy. And they start reading, and then when the triggers, when the keywords are triggered like payment or invoice or deal or whatever word triggers their computer program, they put a person on it, they get involved, and they send out emails through your account looking like yours with an invoice. The spoofed emails, like I said, whoops, excuse me, I pushed the button. The spoofed emails closely mimic a legitimate email, and we're going to see some examples of that in a few minutes. It looks exactly like the person's email that you were expecting to get one letter changed, and you don't pick it up, and we'll see some of those in a minute. The thieves are lurking in your email, and they're watching what goes on. They and then they insert themselves at the right time. They know the language of the trade. They talk diamonds. They talk jewelry. They know how to express themselves as if they were diamond dealers. So don't be fooled by somebody who talks the language of the trade and convinces you. They most often use a triangular setup, and I call this thing a triangular setup because it's a country like India, supplier in India, buyer often offshore in another country, and the bank account in a third country. And by doing that triangle, they make it very difficult for the authorities to track them, because the police in India will say, well, Mr. Supplier, you didn't lose money, the buyer did. And the buyer's company will say, yeah, okay, you're right, you lost money, but the bank account's in Czechoslovakia. And Czechoslovakia says, what do you want from our bank? A guy had a bank account here, and you paid him. It's not our problem. And so all the police in each country say it's someone else's problem. And it's very difficult to track people down. And anyway, they pack up overnight anyway and move to another bank and move on. It's very difficult. No police force that we've managed to find is willing to deal with this. We've talked to the FBI on numerous occasions. They basically told us, report it. It's good for our statistics that you reported. They're going after organized crime. They're going after big people, but they find it very difficult to help the actual victim at the time. The buyers, often their banks say, well, we can't get the money back. We sent it out. You know, so their police can't do much. And the sellers weren't affected because it wasn't them who sent out the false instruction to pay. It was a hacker who hacked into either the buyer or the seller, and we can never tell. So very, very difficult. And this triangular setup makes it even more difficult, especially when the banks are in places like Africa or China who don't really cooperate. Often Eastern Europe, where they don't really cooperate with the authorities. But I have to say, even banks in America and England have not cooperated much. They cite customer secrecy. They say, we can't give you any information about this customer. It's private, and that, whether it's a theft or not for them it's a matter of opinion, and they don't get involved. So the banks don't cooperate very well. The people who've been the most helpful in stopping these kind of frauds are the actual paying banks themselves, your bank. You give your bank an instruction to pay, and often they've got procedures in place which say, whoa, you've never paid this account before, are you sure? What? Why are you paying such a big amount to this foreign country? And often they will alert the customers and say, why are you paying this? And the customer says, oh, cancel, I didn't mean that. So the banks actually often help, and you may want to talk to your banks about saying, if you ever get an instruction for us to pay that sounds out of the ordinary, please don't pay until you get authorization from somewhere else. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes when we get to the spoofing schemes, not just the invoice modification. Here's an example of email addresses that from our industry that we actually saw. The seller, who I'm not saying names, but the seller was in Mumbai. The buyer was in Ramat Gan in Israel. And the original email was this email over here at yahoo.com. The fraudulent email came from something that looked very similar. Sunil Diamond, but at mail.com. And it looked legitimate, and it wasn't legitimate, and money was sent out. Here's another example from some of our own clients. The seller was a medium-sized India trader. The seller wasn't the fraudster, by the way. I'm just saying the fraudster pretended to be the seller, but this original seller was a medium-sized India trader. The buyer was located in Florida in the US, and they were talking via email because of the time difference, and he was instructed to transfer funds. But have a look at the email addresses. Can you guys see the difference between that email address in Gmail and that email address in Gmail? I would get fooled. cd.sarul and cd.sarul, an A instead of an E. I would get fooled. And where was the bank account? In Poland. How much did they lose? 10,000 US dollars, 6.7 crore. That is a definite red light, though. When the bank address is in Poland and the dealer's in India, why would you pay to Poland when the dealer's in India? It doesn't matter what the dealer tries to tell you. Okay, so we've gone through some of the frauds that have to do with injecting emails into the system, which carry false invoices. So we've discussed the Trojan horse issues, the Trojan viruses. We've discussed the fraud that comes from false invoices, and then there's a third type, which can be done physically, but also with the help of technology. And that's the impersonation type of frauds. It's a third and final type of fraud I want to speak about today, and it's rife in the industry, and it's something that we need to be aware of. It's a complicated scam. This one's not as simple as the invoice fraud. The buyer normally requests a diamond or a piece of jewelry and alters the shipping address to a different one. And so you send out high-value merchandise to a false address, and then the merchandise gets stolen. This fraud is used a lot in America. There's a gang of thieves in Florida in America where they phone up a supplier who actually deals with this retailer. So they've done their homework. They pretend they're from a high-profile retailer. They talk to the salespeople there, and they order goods on memo or on consignment, and then they either say, "But I'm at the client now, so please make sure for the next 2 days you send it to here because I need it here right away, and it's not to the normal store address." Or in the case of America, they send it to the store address, and then the crooks phone up FedEx and say, "I'm expecting a parcel to my store, please. I'm on holiday. Divert it to here." And FedEx diverts the parcel on the say-so of the crook because he knows the tracking number. He knows it's on its way. They divert the parcel, and people have been losing diamonds and jewelry to this kind of fraud. In India, we've had different examples, but similar modus operandi, where actually physically they've gone to the bourse and represented to themselves as from a jeweler, some well-known jewelers, and have managed to take diamonds that way. They're very convincing. They speak the language. They always dangle a better deal. Give me this 3-carat now, and maybe I'll buy this 4.5-carat next week. So you want to help them out because you maybe get a better deal. You know, they know who they're dealing with. They usually impersonate an existing customer, and they've likely used social engineering to know a bit more about you and your customers before they attack you. It's not random. Very often, they make their attacks coincide with travel dates of executives in the companies. So if they want to impersonate, I don't know, a buyer from a big retailer, often that buyer is on holiday at the time when they do it. So that when you phone the company, that buyer is not available to talk to. So these frauds are sophisticated. They take planning, and they're not simple to execute, but they're very lucrative. So the thieves keep on going with it. So that's the one kind of impersonation fraud. The other type of impersonation fraud is the CEO email scams, and that basically is a scam where somebody pretends to be a CEO of a company and talks to their financial controller in their own company and emails them saying, send money to this account, send money to that account, and it looks like it's your email address. It talks in the voice of your CEO, and often people have sent money. I personally know of people in the diamond industry that this has happened to. Some have lost money, quite substantial sums of money. A big organization in America where they got an email from the CEO to the financial controller saying, I bought such and such a thing, send money here, please. The deal's sensitive, do it now. And he did it, and they lost money. I know of other people where they impersonated the CEO to the bank, and they wrote to the bank manager saying, please wire this money to here now. I'm afraid I'm in meetings all the way till 4 o'clock today, but I need it done. I'll call you then. And the bank didn't do it. And the bank said, you know why I don't want to do it? Because the name was signed Ronald at the bottom of the email, and this guy always calls himself Ronnie when he talks to me. And so he was suspicious because he always calls him Ronnie and signs himself Ronnie, and the guy wrote Ronald. So these guys hadn't done their homework enough, and because of that, the bank didn't wire money. Otherwise, they would have wired money to the crooks. We're talking about billions of US dollars that have happened, that have had these impersonation scams happening. They use social media a lot to know what we're doing. They often do it when the chief executive is not available, traveling to Europe or Australia, so they know they're in the air or at airports for a certain amount of time, so they're not contactable by phone. So you get this email, and I'll give you an example of some of these emails in the next slide, so that you can see what they look like. And like I said before, very difficult to get the case registered, especially in India, where the companies are often international and the money's in a third place. Very, very difficult for the police to actually take an interest in it because there's nothing they can really do about it. Banks aren't required to refund the payments because they didn't do anything wrong. They got an instruction to pay, normally from you. They got a legitimate instruction from a legitimate authorized person to pay. Just the bank account wasn't one that you wanted to pay because you didn't realize you were being defrauded. So both banks say, well, I didn't do anything wrong, and the other bank says, well, you send money to my client. It's not our problem. If the banks would do a bit of a better know your customer job, they might pick up the fraudulent account on the other end. But like I said, a lot of these are in banks in jurisdictions that aren't so compliant with know your customer laws. Here's an example of an American example. The chief executive was in talks to buy a Chinese company, and he said to his he wrote an email to talk to the lawyer at KPMG, which is another big accounting firm, who would give wiring instructions to the account in China. The Mr. McMurtney, who was the financial controller, got an email from the KPMG lawyer who told him transfer 17 million to this account. So he got an email from his CEO. It wasn't really an email from his CEO. He got an email like the CEO said was going to happen from KPMG, and he transferred $17 million to an account in China, which was stolen. The actual lawyer at KPMG whose email was used told the FBI he'd never heard of this company. He doesn't know why they used his name. They used his email address. It looked like his email address. And these the emails came and phone numbers came from all over the world, including Germany, France, Israel, and Russia. So these frauds are not Nigeria and India only. They're all over the world, all over the place. Another example, and we're running out of time, so I'm just going to skip some of the details. But he wrote to his customer. The CEO ostensibly wrote to his customer, "I have assigned you to manage file T521, strictly confidential, takes priorities over other tasks. Have you been contacted by Stephen Shapiro, the attorney at KPMG?" And he wired $480,000 to a bank in China based on that email. 6 days later, they found out. 6 days later is too late. Money's gone. Final case study that I wanted to explain to you. Similar thing in 2014. He got an email with the executive signature on it even and his face. And he transferred $4.7 million. This one got even worse because to transfer that amount of money, there were instructions in place that 2 people had to approve it in the company side. And after the guy wrote back to the fraudster saying, "I'm just going to get the approval of the right people," they gave him approval themselves. They emailed as if they were those approving people inside the company approving the transfer. $4.7 million. Here's an example from our industry. This happened a couple of years ago. We got 9 cases reported to RapNet within the space of about 6 months, where RapNet members are giving diamonds to buyers based on false claims that they're from a large Indian retail chain. The imposter disappeared. He was eventually in Singapore. One day, eventually came home to India and was arrested in India and was imprisoned. And then they had a local India accomplice who was arrested, but they didn't have enough on him to keep him, and they released him on bail. And I think the accomplice in India didn't get much jail time. These were guys going into the diamond bourse in the BDB, pretending they were from a large, well-known Indian retail chain, and convincing people to give them diamonds just based on that. They were convincing, they were persistent, and they stole diamonds from at least 9 or 10 people before it became well known. And we were publicizing this on RapNet all the time, telling people, be careful. This is an example of one of the announcements we made on RapNet. A lot of these scam artists produce fake but very convincing documents, and then they gave telephone numbers and said we were going to email you from the company to confirm the order, and then they would phone back with, "Our email servers are down. We can't get the thing now," and they would convince you to give them the document. Because you'd basically already done the deal with them. You just were waiting for the official purchase order. "Oh, our email servers are down." So don't believe these stories about emails. Okay, when your email servers come back up, I'll expect the purchase order. I want to phone the company myself. So there's a lot to be done. So those are the 3 types of scam: Trojan, the invoice, false evil invoice, and the impersonation schemes, which take 2 flavors: the CEO impersonation, so that within his own company you get convinced to send money, or the retail impersonation, where you pretend to be somebody you're not to get in order for people to send you diamonds or money. Those 3 scams are very prevalent in our industry. They don't come from within our industry. They're worldwide, but people have cottoned on to the diamond industry and the jewelry industry as a place that this can successfully work, because we're used to sending large sums of money around. We're used to moving high-value assets around, and we're often used to sending things to bank accounts that maybe not as sensible as normal, because this industry, sometimes people have multinational companies with bank accounts all over the place. RapNet in 2016, 3.63 million diamonds, number of diamonds were traded through RapNet, to a total of $14 billion. So we see a lot of stuff coming through, and we see a lot of these frauds, because our members deal directly with each other, but they let us know when there's a problem, and we try and step in and solve it. We can't solve the fraud problems because instructions to pay often come from emails outside of the RapNet system, and that's when the fraud happens. We've reported, we've had over 30 cases reported to us since 2015. More than 2.5 crore have been stolen that we know of. A lot of cases aren't reported to us, especially the impersonation schemes where people sent diamonds to the thieves because they just feel stupid or it was their fault, so they don't bother reporting to it. So there's the problem is wide, and it's growing. And it's because we don't know how to protect ourselves with the technology that we're using. So on to the issues, the magic cure. There is no magic cure. What can we do about it? The scam industry is like any other. It thrives on innovation. They keep on trying. They keep on doing new things. They keep on looking for new victims. You may not fall for the Nigerian astronaut who's been in space for 14 years scheme, but it is possible you pay an invoice for goods that you ordered that you were expecting, especially if the bank account is in the same country as you, but often it's in a different country. So how do we protect ourselves? And now moving away from what the frauds are and from what you've seen on the example, so that you can start looking for these things, to what can we do? There's three things you can do: cybersecurity, vigilance and common sense, and implementing safe trading methods. What do I mean cybersecurity? It's a given that at some stage you will be hacked. Don't think it's not going to happen to you. It's not a question of when. Sorry, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And more, it's a question of how do you react to it? And how long before you find out you're hacked? What systems are in place that you have to work it out? I'm not talking about an antivirus. I'm not talking about simple free security checks. If you're going to be dealing in transactions that deal with things like email or instant messaging, you need to make sure that you're protected, that you get proper scans, that you have a policy for for your cybersecurity. Free is not free. Free email, free antivirus, free storage, all of that comes with a price. And often the price is a security price. You trade your security and your information for the convenience of using something that's free. Most of the hacks that we've seen come through these free email accounts of Hotmail, of Gmail, or Yandex, all these large things, because it's worth the while of the hackers to work out how to hack into these kinds of emails, because there's so many victims there. So they hone their skills on these free email accounts, which everyone wants to use. Don't click on attachments that are suspicious. Don't click on links that don't make sense. Make sure that the email you're getting is something you've expected. Put the email into quarantine and have your virus checker check it before you open it. Take a bit of time to ensure your security. Obviously, you need to make sure your computer has got all the latest security patches and it's up to date. Turn on two-factor authentication. I'll explain a little bit more about two-factor authentication in a minute, but basically, two-factor authentication says you get more than just a password protecting you. You either have to put in a password and something you have, like a one-time OTP, one-time password that comes to your phone. So it says you've got your phone and you know your password. Two factors that are authenticating you. Sometimes it's something you are, like your fingerprint plus your password. Two different things protecting you to log into your account so that not anybody can log into your account. Even this is not foolproof, but it's a big step up to just password. And back up your files regularly so that if you do get a virus or a ransomware attack where they take your computer ransom until you pay the money, you can format your computer and put your information back on without a loss of data. Richard A. Clarke, a former national coordinator for security and counterterrorism in the United States, he also writes a lot of books. He says it like it is. If you spend more on coffee than on IT security, you will be hacked, and you deserve to be hacked. He's saying, listen, take it seriously. Don't cry after it happens if you didn't prepare for it. So that's the first thing, cybersecurity, which we're not experts in. You're not expected to be experts in, but you are expected to find the right expert to help you protect yourself. Second step, vigilance and common sense. Take extra precautions for first-time customers. Take extra precautions if the shipping address changes of an existing customer. Have a procedure in place that says if such a thing should happen, if there's a change in bank details or shipping address, this is how we go about verifying. Know your supplier, know your customer. These KYC, KYS rules are not just a legal requirement for a formality. They're not just a compliance issue. If you really know your customer, you would get a different kind of when you get a false email like that, it would ring alarm bells. because you would know that they don't have bank accounts in Czechoslovakia. Often we advise people before making a payment, telephone the seller to confirm and verify their banking details, especially if it's not an account you paid to before. This is especially true of cross-border transactions where either you get put under pressure from the fraudster, says pay now, and where you don't have coinciding time zones. They take advantage of that, so be aware of that. And when you telephone, make sure you're telephoning a number that you've looked up or that you know, not one that the hacker gives you in the email. Don't click on links to verify a company that you're getting emails. Go look them up yourself in Google or whatever search engine you use. Don't rely on the information you get from the supplier or the customer. Make sure the account names on bank-wide information match the seller. A lot of the times we find the account number is the account number, but the account name is something completely not related to the seller, and people don't pick it up and they just pay. Don't transfer money to a bank located in a different city to what the seller is in. The sellers often, the fraudsters often will open bank accounts where it's easier for them to open accounts, and it's harder for them to open accounts where you have legitimate people. Confirm on the telephone again. Like I said before, do your own typing. Don't go and click on links that you get sent. Scammers try and hide things in these emails, and they're very sophisticated. Make a call. Put in procedures for how you transfer money. These procedures should include how many people are involved with approving large transfers. What do you have to check before you do a transfer? So we discussed cybersecurity. We've discussed common sense. Safe trading methods. The internet brings us amazing opportunities. It's amazing to be able to find new clients and new suppliers, not only in your country, but all over the world. It's amazing to be able to compare prices and find the right diamond or jewelry that matches your demand at the cheapest price from the right supplier who'll give you the right terms. With that comes responsibility to trade safely. We at RapNet, we educate our members a lot because we find that by education, by doing seminars like this webinar, by providing blogs to our customers, education is the best way to prevent you falling into a fraud trap. We post blogs, we make announcements. This doesn't stop the thieves, of course, and the victims, the supply of victims doesn't dry up, but at least the more people are aware of it, the more difficult it is, and the thieves will find it more difficult, and they'll move on to easier targets. We've also invested in RapNet huge sums of money to roll out an upgraded, more secure network that will be rolled out in January. We're doing away with email on RapNet. Email seems to be the main cause of almost all of these frauds that we're seeing. Almost everything that was lost, all money that was lost came as a result, almost all, of a fraudulent instruction in an email to pay that came from the hacker. So we're doing away with emails as a method of communicating in RapNet so that we cut out that section of the fraud, of the chain of the fraud. Just a word again, so that's your safe trading methods. Know who you're dealing with. Try a serial clear of email. Use the mechanisms that are given to you by trading networks like RapNet or whatever else you're using, and combine that with your own cybersecurity and your own common sense. Just a word on two-factor authentication, because this is important. Two-factor authentication combines one of these three things. There's what you know, password, your birthday, whatever, what you have, a cell phone, an email address, which they can send you a link to, and what you are, your fingerprint, your eye scan, or whatever. And those combination of 2 out of the 3 is considered pretty safe to be able to get you into an account. And if you turn on two-factor authentication on some of your email accounts, etc., you up the security tremendously. iPhone users know that the iPhone can recognize your face, although they've had some issues with that, and that it recognizes other people's face instead of yours. Initially, when Android came out with it, you could hold up a photograph to a phone and it would recognize the photograph, and the technology has moved on since then. So one factor like just a face or just a picture isn't enough. A password plus a face, a password plus a picture plus a fingerprint. These are 2 factors which are very useful. Turn it on. If you're using Gmail, If you're using some other thing, turn on two-step verification. So they'll send a code to your device every time someone tries to log in from your account in an unverified computer. If you're using the Google app, it's very simple. A thing pops up on your phone. You just have to click yes if it was you who's trying to log in. So turn it on. That little bit of security can help a lot if you're using free things like Gmail to conduct your business. From a RapNet specific point of view, if you are a RapNet member, communicate only via the RapNet website. Don't use emails. Keep a record of all negotiations between the parties through the RapNet website. We'll be introducing in RapNet the communication center or the RapNet inbox, which will record all discussions that members have with each other without email. So you just have to really protect your RapNet password and all the conversations are here. You don't need to go outside of the system. So that's RapNet specific, but I'm saying in general, emails equal insecure. If you need to use emails because we need to use them in our business, be wary, be careful, be alert. So that's essentially the presentation, which is about being alert, know what to look for. These online scams are there. Watch out for injected in Trojans. Watch out for invoices that are fake. Watch out for impersonation schemes. Have your computers checked regularly. Don't trust. Be careful when your employees bring cell phones and things to work because cell phones are also targeted. Have them scanned. Be alert. It can save lots of money. That is essentially the presentation. I'd like to open up to questions now, or if Swapnil wants to say anything else in the way to deal with this, please let me know.
No, we are good to start with the questions.
Okay. How do people do the questions, and how would you like me to respond?
You can read out the questions and respond back for the benefit of all.
Okay, one of the questions that I'm seeing, oh, hang on, I've got to try and expand it. I'm not quite sure why that's so small. One of the questions I'm seeing here has to do with Bitcoins, diamond trading with Bitcoins, and what is my view in the past, present, and future of Bitcoins? And that's a great question. It's a fantastic question. I don't want to relate to Bitcoin specifically, because Bitcoin, I believe, has its issues, and it's not necessarily an actual currency because of the way it wildly fluctuates, and it doesn't, and its value is more a kind of investment vehicle than a currency, especially since they announced that they're going to stop at some stage producing Bitcoins, and so that there's going to be a limited supply, and that's how they're going to keep the value up. But I think the question of cryptocurrencies and blockchain transactions is great. It's exactly where I think this industry is going to have to go to. The blockchain transactions and cryptocurrencies promise much cheaper transactions without the expensive fees of the current financial system. I believe the financial system's ripe for upheaval, and it's going to happen soon. I know of at least 2 Israeli companies that are involved in producing some sort of blockchain transaction record to try and keep costs down and fraud out of the market. So I think it's a fantastic question. It's spot on. This is where we're going, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. Within 1 to 2 years, I believe there'll be alternatives to traditional banking, which will be safer and cheaper. So that is a great question. I hope that answers the question. I'm just trying to get to the rest of these questions, which are proving very difficult for me. If you just give me a... Swapna, can you explain to me how to expand this thing on the side? So, there we go. Never mind. It worked itself out. Okay. Somebody asked, how do we gain and ensure confidence when dealing with other RapNet members? Also a good question. I don't want to turn this into a RapNet publicity seminar, but there's 2 ways to gain confidence. 3 ways. First of all, how long has that person been a RapNet member? If that person's a RapNet member for a while and they're in good standing, chances are you can gain confidence with them because they haven't had any complaints. Secondly, look at their ratings. We have ratings on RapNet for exactly that reason. Don't worry about if they're not too many positive ratings, but if they're negative ratings, find out why. Thirdly, you can ask them for references on RapNet, and then you can talk to other people on RapNet. So gaining confidence while dealing with other members on RapNet is a good question, and that's what I would suggest. Yogesh asked, does RapNet provide any insurance for losses? No, we don't. And the reason we don't is that right now RapNet doesn't trade. We don't do the trading through RapNet. The trading's handled offline by our members directly with each other. And for that reason, we only charge a subscription fee, and we don't charge any kind of transaction fees. We've looked into insurance, but as long as the trading is not in our control, we can't provide insurance. However, if we start moving towards a system where we allow trading within our system that we control, we will be re-looking at that question. Harish asks about what are my views on various payment gateways used for online payments like the very recent mazalit.com. Are they safe? I'm not really equipped to answer that question. Payment gateways generally are PCI compliant. They comply with the highest levels of security and privacy issues because they get a lot of information transactions. So we haven't heard of too many payment gateways being the victims of hacking. Mazalit.com, to my knowledge, is not a payment gateway. They're a completely different type of payment method along the lines of blockchain, blockchain and cryptocurrency. So keep your eyes open with them. I think that they've got a bright future, and them and other people like them. I know Diamonds.io, which is another way of transacting, also based on blockchain and cryptocurrency, are specifically aimed at the diamond industry to help them with payment issues. And I believe that them or a solution like them are the future. I can't specifically answer if any one of them is safe. I don't know. I don't have any particular information. There's a question from Mahesh asking, is there any physical verification of office done for the members of RapNet? We do certain KYC procedures. We don't physically verify the actual office, but we verify business addresses. We verify business certificates, that they got a certificate of business. We verify individual identity with either a PAN card or a passport, but we don't actually physically go to the address that they give us to check that it really exists. And we do get 2 or 3 references, which we call to get a reference before we allow somebody onto RapNet. So we verify the person to make sure that they're got a good business reputation more than the physical office. I hope that answers that question, Mahesh. Jyoti asks, what is the most important factor to consider when buying a diamond online? Wow, a good question, but very difficult to answer. The most important factor to consider when buying a diamond online is, does it meet your needs? Do you trust the supplier? And do you have the right terms that you need? Because a good diamond that you have to pay cash for when you actually need to get 5 days credit or 12, 15 days credit is not a good diamond for you. So, but the most important security factor to consider is know your supplier. Know your supplier. Don't allow the convenience of the internet to blind you into doing things that you wouldn't do if the person was sitting across the desk from you. If a guy came into your office and said, "Hi, you want to buy a diamond?" and is looking around furtively, and you'd say, "Whoa, where's that diamond from? Who are you?" You'd ask questions. Same on the internet. The internet doesn't replace common sense. Know your supplier. A similar question from Hitai is, how safe is it to trade diamonds online? My answer is very safe. RapNet's been going for about 15 years, and millions and millions and millions of diamonds have been traded through RapNet, and billions of dollars. And people use it sometimes as their only way of trading diamonds. Trading diamonds online is safe. Like I said, common sense and security procedures that you need in any business should prevail in what you're doing. There's a question that says you've talked about various frauds through emails. Would you explain in detail various ways by which these can be avoided? So I think I went through that. That question may have come in a little bit before I went through some of the ways to avoid it. The cybersecurity, the common sense, and safe trading methods that I went through. Sujal asks, what are the security measures and hack systems taken up by RapNet to protect, I think he means protect members' privacy and data? Good question. We've invested millions of dollars over the last couple of years to roll out a new platform that's coming out in January. We've upgraded the authentication, the login that people do, to make sure that that the login is as secure as we can make it. I can't really reveal all the things that we're doing because that would be that would be silly of me if there's if the details slip out to the crooks who then find ways to go around it. Basically, we try and make sure that we know that you are who you say you are when you try and log in, and we're only going to be improving that and getting better at it as time goes on. The Benefit asks, what steps can one take at an institutional level to prevent being scanned in terms of IT and processes? It's a good question. I'm not really the right IT expert to answer that. There are people who do this for a living. The one answer is policies and procedures. And there's lots of policy documents you can get from the internet as a start for what kind of internet security you should be doing as a policy and procedure before you even get to the technical parts. Can I bring my own devices like my own phone to work, or should I have a company-issued phone? Can I install programs on my computer? Can I install programs on my computer or not? What is the what are procedures when somebody leaves the company? How quickly do we stop their access? So there's a lot of policies and procedures that you can put in place, and these are available as templates free throughout the internet. And then, of course, you need the actual technical security, antivirus, anti-malware, regular scans, regular scanning of your network to make sure that there's no weird wireless devices there that you wouldn't be expecting. So at an institutional level, we're talking about policies, procedures, and professional IT people explaining to you how to protect your company. Benefit asks another question, isn't there a way to trace where the funds are finally being transferred to catch the perpetrators? Maybe getting in touch with Interpol. A great question, Benefit. We tried Interpol. Interpol doesn't deal with people. Interpol deals with police forces. So you have to get your police to get Interpol interested in the case so that they can try and do this international thing. And Interpol takes a while to get moving, and they deal with mostly big things. Your police don't want to waste their the time they get with Interpol on small amounts. So we've had a very difficult time trying to get the police or Interpol involved. Like I said, we talked to the FBI, we report to the FBI, we reported it to local police, we tell everybody who gets defrauded to report it to their local police, and in the end, nobody's really taken up the reins. They're trying to deal with us on a large multinational level, but for the individual victims, there's not a lot of police involvement, unfortunately. Then Mr. Printer says, all said, if you slip, make a mistake, and if you realize it immediately, then the receiving bank can stop payment. That is true. If you realize your mistake almost immediately, you can often get your bank or the receiving bank to get the payment back. But if you realize it 1 or 2 days later and the money's hit the account and then being cleared out of the account, there's almost nothing you can do. Unless you can get the receiving bank to try and find their customer to get the money back because there's been a mistake, and that customer disappears. So you're right. If you realize it immediately, and many of our customers have received money back, 2 or 3 days later in some cases even, but the majority don't. And then the last question that I see here is from Raju Kama, who says, what should we do if we get fraud emails? Firstly, report it. Report it to whoever, to RapNet or to whoever you're dealing with, to the police. Report it, first of all. Secondly, find a different way to communicate with that supplier, because somewhere you or they have been compromised. Sometimes it becomes obvious who's been compromised. if one supplier suddenly has 9 frauds out there with 9 different buyers, then it's obvious that it's the supplier's email that's been compromised. But sometimes the buyer email could be compromised and not the supplier. So it's difficult to tell, but we always assume both, and we always tell them, change your passwords immediately, get your computer scanned, and we announce it. So publicize, take action, both on a procedure level and on a technical level. I believe those are all the questions that have been asked. So if there are no further questions, I will hand over to Swapnil to wrap up. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's all be careful out there.
Thanks, Cyril, for having this very wonderful presentation for us today, from all the way from Israel. Thank you, RapNet, for having this presentation for us. It was a good insight that everybody has got from this. I think we have to close this session for today, since we don't have any further questions. Thank you, everybody, for being such a lovely and active participants for our webinar today. We're ending up the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.